clap different. I felt like. How come we didn't clap at the same time?
You want to clap at the same time?
Yeah.
All right.
1, 2, 3. There we go. All right. Man, I'm getting used to these headphones, so I like it.
It's gonna be so awkward because you're gonna watch that camera footage, and I tried so hard, bro. I was like,
how are you? How did you not get that? Is that because of the headphones?
No, I was just gonna make it easier on you and not clap the same time as you.
I feel like you've been drinking like cough syrup on the way here or something.
No.
You're way off on that, man.
I'm great.
Hey, dude,
I was looking in the sun too much on the way here.
I got you set up on something just glorious here. I can see my mouse. So I want you.
Oh yeah.
And I'll put this in the.
Jeez.
So I want to walk through this, dude. There's so much to learn right here, man.
Yeah.
So
I can walk you through every moment, every measure.
Watch this. Okay, so let's tee this up. Let's tee this up first. So we were there, Easter service. People are excited, you know.
Yeah.
It's raining though. People are upset, but there's like this hope. And Tyler comes up to me and said, "Ricky's gonna flip his drumstick today." And I'm like, I don't know what that means. So the first 3 songs, nothing happened. And he kept saying, he kept nudging me. He's like, here it comes. He's gonna do it. And you make eye contact with him. He's gonna flip his drumstick. And then right at this moment is when you did it. But I want you to add some context before we throw this in there.
So that's kind of how the story goes. So I actually wasn't supposed to play drums this Easter. So we had a situation with a volunteer wasn't able to play. And so I had to step in and be on drums. And Tyler comes to me on Saturday night after the Saturday night service. And you know how Tyler talks. He's like, "Tell you what, man, you ought to come play drum. You ought to do something. You ought to flip your guitar or something." And I was like, "All right." And I said, "I'm actually not playing guitar. I'm not playing guitar. I'm playing drums." And he's like, "Well, do it. You ought to do like one of them, you know." I was like, "You mean a stick flip?" "Yeah, man. Yeah." You know how he talks. So I was like, "All right, I'll do it." And I didn't think anything else of it. So, I mean, through sound check at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, I didn't think about it. And then I saw him in the lobby at 9:15, and he was like, "Are you going to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." He's like, you won't. I was like, "Yes, I will." So, I mean, it's one of those things like I've done before, and you do it 1,000 times, and you don't even really have to like think about it. And I say that like I'm good at it. I'm not good at it. I don't do them routinely for a reason. But so it's the last part of the set, and I can see Tyler out of the corner of my view from the kit.
Oh, just watching.
And he just would, I mean, I could feel the heat from his eyes. And I mean, we're going, like, we start out with a slow song. So I'm just like, and I wanted somehow to be like, "Tyler, just wait." Like,
right. Oh no, he wasn't waiting.
Like, just wait. It's not here yet. And so we get through it. We get through half of the song, and we get to the point. And again, throughout the whole song, I wasn't like anticipating anything. I was like, we're just gonna do this. Like, it's gonna be very nonchalant. No one's gonna notice. And for more context, the part of the song where it happens at is a big part of the song. So right. Like, there's this big build, and then there's a break, and then it's a big like drop, basically. I'm trying to describe it for people who don't know music, but it's a big part of the song. Like, this is the part of the worship set where I should be like just eating the cymbals. I mean, so anyways, I build and I come up and I throw the stick, and I just never saw it again. And there was four beats in that measure, just to be very specific. And on the fourth beat was where it needed to happen. But then I needed to come back on the one. And it feels like a lifetime when you're not doing anything. But when you throw your stick in the air, bro, I mean, that's like 30 minutes of time that passes by. It was terrible. And so when I throw it up in the air, I'm like, and then it just hits the ground. And I knew that I had to come back on the one. So I hit. But what was so funny is the stick pobbling on the snare drum. Like, it was so bad. It was so bad, bro. And so immediately I can just feel the whole like congregation looking. And so then I get off, and Branson comes up to me and he's like, "You know you were on screen, right?" And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." So like not only did the people who were close to me see it, but everyone in the room saw it. So I missed maybe a half of it. I guess we'll see. Let's go ahead and play it. Let's see what happens.
So you feel like you said it feels like eternity.
It felt
I've watched
like
this.
a lifetime.
I've watched this more than my wedding video. But here we go.
2, 3, 4.
Boom.
So I missed the beat. What's funny is I'm laughing through it. It's
Hold on. I gotta pull it back. You keep talking.
It's so bad. Never do anything your friends ask you to do.
I've found so many observations from this.
I mean,
20, 30 years. Well, watch this.
I don't know. What's funny is like no one in the band even realized it.
See. I don't know. I feel like
Randall did. He was our MD. But
well, then who's the guy playing guitar?
Tyler. Oh yeah, boy. He was
hawking
it's
you
like
down.
He was waiting for it, but he didn't know. I don't.
That was my question.
But he was just like, what? I mean, I guess that's the thing when you're playing music with somebody, like, sometimes you're just kind of like looking at the other musician,
right?
You know, vibing. I guess is the best word to put it.
Because I watched it just right before you came in, and I was just and it's like he knew. Hold on here. Now look at him. He just turned his head. Boom. So he's watching
right
you.
Yeah, he's watching. He saw it all happen.
I didn't see it on the screen. And then here we go. It happens so fast.
Yeah,
You said it takes a long time.
Pretty quick.
And then you were just so quick to find that other stick, though. And then boom, camera off.
Yeah. So like during the verse, like right before that, I actually grabbed some sticks from behind me in my stick bag and put them in this. We have this holster. Because I was like, just in case. So I say I wasn't worried about it, but maybe I was because I don't normally do that. Like
I thought it was quick.
It was. But again, for context, that part of the song should have been like, lights up. As loud. That was the loudest point. That should have been the loudest point, and nothing happened because I was drumming with one hand. So, look at my face right now. I don't know if you can. You probably need to show them that. But
I'll put that in
I'm
there.
looking at Randall like that is my. I'm never playing drums again here. Look. I told him in the talkback mic during the chorus. I was like, bro, I gotta stop fooling around. Like,
if you would have landed that, and it's Easter Sunday too. You know, you picked the best time of the song.
Hold on. Let me preface. I did this for no one else except for Tyler Allen. So before you call me a show off, that was for Tyler Allen only. But it turned out being for everyone because I messed up. Yeah.
And just the fact, that camera was on you for probably 5 seconds.
Oh yeah, and what's funny is the camera wasn't on me for probably, it was probably on me a total of 10 seconds the whole service. I got to get comfortable here. I know we're gonna be here for a minute.
No, that was great, and that's gonna be the gift for me that keeps on giving.
I'm trying to think if there's any other awkward moments that happened to me, or has happened to me while leading worship. There's definitely some, but.
Ever forgotten the words?
Oh yeah.
What do you do?
It's always like that because we have talkback or the confidence monitors.
Wait, confidence monitors?
It's what it's called.
They show the words?
Yeah.
Confidence monitors.
There's
I like
one
that.
in the corners and then there's one right in front of us, and we have to be careful because it can become a habit to like look at them, and you don't want to just look at the TVs. Like people are like, "What are you looking at?"
Right.
So, but yeah, when you forget the words, you can go find them. But then sometimes the person running the words, they're not changing it fast enough. So you're like, what are the words? What are the words? What are the words? What are the words? What are the words you love? And then you hit it like right in the
like you're just in the top. You're way in front of your skis. Like you're just.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like something else that's happened to me. Oh, and I had to close out Sisterhood night.
Tell me about that.
That was so awkward. So yeah, Sisterhood's a women's event, and I don't think I even sang a song at Sisterhood because they were pretty intentional. We want female
Women.
leaders up here, so it's like cool. But this time I was leading a song. Well, for whatever reason, at the end of the service, the spirit was just there, and so it was like one of those things where I was kind of looking at KB. She's like, "Yeah, we're gonna keep singing this." So we kept singing. Well, then we got done, and it was kind of like, all right, we're definitely going to close this thing down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like looking at Jordan sitting over here to my right, and she's not moving. And I'm like, man, I feel like it says on the planner that I'm going to close, but surely I'm not. Like, so I'm thinking about this through my head.
As you're playing
as
guitar
as I'm playing. Nothing's happening. We're not singing at this moment. And then I'm like, well, I've sat here for too long, so let's go back into a chorus.
And what's too long? Like you were just strumming for...
I mean, probably in this moment, it was probably 20 seconds.
Okay.
I was probably sitting there for 20 seconds, and nothing was happening. So, like in a worship night, that would be normal.
Right.
Like 20 seconds of an instrumental.
Right.
But this was not normal. So, I don't know. Yeah. So 20 seconds went by. I sang another chorus. And while I'm singing that chorus, I did the whole thing, you sing, so I can think. And
now I know when you say that, what's happening.
That's not always the truth. That's not always the truth. So I can think. And so we got to the end of that chorus, and the best thing I had was out loud, well, I've never closed a women's conference before. And what was so bad was, like, I didn't listen to the teaching. I mean, because it didn't,
Right.
this is going to sound bad, but it didn't apply to me.
Right.
So it was actually a panel, and they were talking about something. I don't know. But so I was out in the lobby. So I couldn't, like, wrap it up. Like, I couldn't,
Yeah, right. You could
full
tie
circle
something
it. Yeah. So it was very awkward.
What'd you say?
I think I said something along the lines of, like, I've never closed a women's conference before, but it was so great to worship with each of you.
Was it like Talladega Nights where you're just sort
I don't know what to do with my hands. Yeah.
But you keep strumming too?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I don't really remember.
What made you want to become like a worship pastor?
That's a long story.
You got time?
Yeah. So I don't know. I started playing music, or I started having an interest in music when I was maybe, I would say 7 or 8 years old. I started playing drums earlier, but that was just kind of like, I had a family member who did it, and when you're a kid, you look up to others, and so I just played drums in our back garage. Like, there was no rhyme or reason. I just had a drum set, just like probably most kids do. And around 7 or 8, I was like, well, then the idea of like having a band made sense to me, and I was like, well, I want to be in a band. Well, at 7 or 8 years old, like,
yeah,
I'm not going to be in a band unless it's like
right.
Nickelodeon, like the Naked Brothers Band. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't, dude. The what?
The Naked Brothers Band.
Naked Brothers. That's
Yeah.
Nickelodeon.
Yeah, it's on Nickelodeon.
See, you're 24, right?
Yeah,
So my Nickelodeon days was like, Hey Arnold was big.
yeah,
The Rugrats, and that.
right.
The Naked Boys must have been after my time.
Was Caillou big during your day?
I can picture I can hear the tune of no. All That was really big. All That was in the back end. Are You Afraid of the Dark was in the back end for me. SpongeBob wasn't even big when I was.
Yeah. So, like, I'm trying to think of who else was big back then. I was a big Green Day fan.
But that was you weren't even born.
What, when Green Day?
Yeah, dude. I mean, you might have just been born.
Yeah, when they first started. But when they blew up, they blew up right away. But like 2007, 2008.
That was Green Day? Like Time of Your Life?
I mean, 98 to, I'd say 2012.
How old were you in 98?
You were 1. I was born in 98. Bro.
My mind was just blown
I was born in 98. What were you doing in 98?
And you're going to sit here and tell me about Green Day,
I mean, I'm sure you know them before.
I do like Green Day.
Like they got big, but I can't get into their stuff anymore, but I used to. Like that was my thing. That was my taste of music. Well, anyway, so I got an interest in that, and obviously the closest thing I could get to a band was the church worship team. And we actually didn't have one at the time. We had these 2 teachers, John Homberry and Laura Lee Homberrier. Shout out to them if they ever watch this.
Is this in Vanceboro?
Mm-hmm. So they taught at West Craven, but they came to our church. It was a small church, Epworth United Methodist Church. And they were musicians, and they were like, we want to start a praise and worship team. This dates it. It's called a praise team.
Praise team. And then, so but before that, what did they? Because
It was nothing. It was a choir. Like it was, and I had nothing to do
And you're
with
just
that.
singing. They're just singing. The whole congregation singing hymns.
Yeah, my mom was actually in the choir. I remember going to like choir rehearsals with her. I mean, when I was a little boy, like this is like fever dreamish to me because I barely remember it. But yeah, so they came and they were there for about 3 or 4 weeks, and they started a praise team, and they started a Wednesday night service, which was the only service that the praise team would play at. They wouldn't play on Sunday mornings, and it eventually got to where they would play on Sunday mornings, but they didn't start out that way. And so yeah, so I started playing drums then right away, and I knew how to play already.
Wait, pause. How old are you here?
I want to say I was 8.
And you're playing drums?
Yeah, I mean, my parents could probably tell you exactly, but I want to say it was 8 years old. I mean, that feels right. Just trying to line some other things up in my
Like
life.
second grade-ish is 8.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Second, third grade, I want to say is when it started. And so that was, I mean, that was my, again, closest thing to ever being in a band. And they had an acoustic drum set in this church that was probably the size, I don't know. It had maybe 20 rows of pews in it. So however big that is.
Yeah.
2 Sunday school classes. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, you know, a kid, I'm like,
Right.
I'm hitting these things.
Yeah.
And so people all the time are like, hey, we got to get him off the drums, or we got to buy an electric kit. So they bought me an electric kit to play. And I played there for, let's see, until middle school. Because in middle school, I started going to West Vanceboro. So this is kind of leading into the next part of this like story. I started going to West Vanceboro Church of God, which is a totally different scene. I mean, it's more Pentecostal. Worship sets were longer. You know, at Worth we did 2 or 3 songs and that was it. You know.
Hold on right there. So Church of God, Pentecostal. So I don't know, you know, I'm still learning a lot about these different things. What, when you say it's Pentecostal and so worship's longer, what is it? What does that worship look like?
Yeah. So it's more charismatic. So it would be, I mean, I'd say worship was probably upwards of 30 minutes. And I mean, there would be Sundays where the pastor wouldn't preach because the Holy Spirit was moving through worship. So, I mean, he would get up there, and sometimes he would exhort and like, you know, speak into moments, and, you know, we would have altar calls and he would call people to prayer, but like there would be Sundays where he wouldn't preach, and it didn't happen every Sunday.
Sure.
Like this wasn't like a once a month routine thing, but like when the Holy Spirit was moving in the service through the songs, I mean, he would allow the music to minister. And so, you know, so that was that kind of church. It was brand new to me. Like I didn't know what, you know, speaking in tongues was. I didn't know, I mean, people falling out in the Spirit. Like that was all like brand new. So I started going there. And their youth group was really big, which is why I actually started going, because Epworth didn't have much of a youth program going on. So I had a friend invite me to a youth revival. And I was like, no, I don't really want to go. Like, that's not really my scene. I mean, and I was probably more of an introvert as a kid because, I mean, meeting new people stressed me out. But I ended up going. I went back the second night, and that was the night that I got saved, actually. Anthony Braswell preached. I couldn't tell you what he preached on, but I knew that I was convicted, and the Holy Spirit, I mean, you know, that lump in your throat, that pull on your heart, and it's like, I'm either going to be obedient or I'm going to be miserable, you know?
And you're in middle school.
I was in middle school. Dang. And I went home. I'm getting off track, but I'll promise I'll bring it back full circle. But I went home that night, and I walked in, and my parents are sitting in the living room, and my mom's actually reading her Bible. And I said, I told her, I was like, Mom, Dad, I think I just gave my life to Jesus. And if you knew me as a kid, like I was pretty rebellious. I mean, I wasn't like, you know, smoking weed or anything like that, but I had a hard time listening, following rules, pushing the limits, back talk. I mean, I think I was swearing when I was 6 years old, you know, like, and parents didn't know about it. But so that was at middle school. I dealt with middle school things. Now I understand now middle schoolers. I mean, it's just totally different now. But I dealt with middle school things back then. And so it was different, but it was the same. And my parents were like, do you know what that means? Like to say that. And I was like, I think so. Like I feel different. And that's all I could really describe it as, is I feel different. Something in me has changed. My heart has changed. And my mom was like, well, you understand, like that means that your behavior and everything you do in your life needs to replicate that. And I was like, well, yeah, that means I got to be a better person, right? So obviously very, low level theological understanding
Yeah, right.
at that point, but also too, it was true. Like, and I went to school the next day, and this boy walked up to me. I'm not gonna say his name, but he's like, "What'd you do what'd you do last night?" And I was like, "Well, I actually went to church at West Vanceboro, and I got saved." I didn't even know what that meant.
Right.
Like,
oh man, what do you say?
and he's like, "You got saved? Like you're a Christian now?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Man, you'll be cussing by lunchtime." I was like, "No, man, I'm telling you, like, I feel different. Like something in me has changed." And I can say, and this isn't true for everybody, but for me, like in that moment at that altar, I felt the release of the weight of the world that was on my shoulders at that current time. And I'm not going to say that release has sustained me. I've had to get back in the Word every day, go back to the altar. I've had to get back in prayer every day. Like, it's your daily bread. But that was the point in time where things changed for me. I walked out the door different than I walked in, and I felt that. And that week was crazy. Like, I could tell you probably what I wore that week. But I put a Bible in my book bag. I didn't know what I was going to use it for. I didn't have the courage to go read scripture at lunch, but I had it with me. And I probably read it 3 times that week.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I didn't have a Bible in my book bag before then, And so then this just chain reaction of things continue to happen. I got involved with FCA, met Scott Burchard. At this point, I'm in high school. And I got involved with FCA. Along with FCA, I got involved at the youth worship team, with the youth worship team at West Vanceboro. And I started out playing drums. I just picked up guitar. This is freshman year. I just picked up guitar. And I was still having to use chord charts like in front of me. I couldn't memorize the music. It was all I could do to memorize where my hands needed to be for the chords. So I was pretty fluent in drums. One night they needed an acoustic guitar player. So I was like, well, sign me up. I mean, I don't know why I can't. If you let me have the music in front of me, I can do it. We do not do that at Covenant. no chord charts at Covenant. But I at one point did.
So hold on right there, because I have a question. So that means if you don't have a sheet in front of you.
Yeah.
So if you're playing whatever, Graves in the Gardens, whatever, and you're playing guitar, you need to know all the notes for the entire song?
At that point, all the chords, I needed to know them. I couldn't have them. I didn't have them in my head. And I'll break that down later. Like, it's easier than it probably seems. I mean, it's probably hard if you've never done it, just like anything else. But at that point in time, I wasn't to the level where I could play without a chord chart. And so they gave me the chord chart, and I played the whole set. Well, then it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, the youth pastor, Brent Manning, was like, hey, we need somebody to sing tonight. And I was like, well, like, I sing to Green Day, you know what I mean? Like, I sing to Green Day. I know some what is it, Boulevard of Broken Dreams or something like that.
Was that Green Day?
Yeah, I walk alone here.
Wow, yeah, I guess that was Green Day.
But so it's like, I know, maybe I can sing. So they gave me a microphone, and I don't know, I sang.
And you didn't have any coaching, or they just...
No coaching, man. So it was actually the youth pastor's wife, and who was kind of leading up the worship team, and she did a great job. But I wouldn't say it was professional vocal coaching. Like, she helped us, hey, you need to pronounce your words when you sing, and sing into the mic and project, like those types of things. But yeah, so I mean, I started singing then, and my voice was terrible. I mean, it was nasally, and I was going through puberty, so it would crack. I mean, my voice still cracks, but
yeah, mine cracked the other day too.
But yeah, so I started doing that, and I don't know. So you asked the question, when did I realize I wanted to be a worship leader? I realized at a certain point in time that, I played baseball, played football. You do so many things as a kid. This felt natural to me. Getting in front of people, even though I didn't even have a good voice at the time, getting in front of people and leading them in song, leading them to something that's bigger than myself, felt comfortable. And I remember actually one night we did a worship night, and again, new vocalist, new worship leader. And I don't know what it was, but I said, you know what, I'm going to pray in this moment, just in my head. And so I start praying. And at the end of that prayer, like, and this isn't to toot my own horn, but that was when I realized, man, this isn't even me doing this. This is something greater inside of me, and I need to learn how to tap into that more. And the more I did that, the more people started to realize something inside of me and called it out in me. You have an anointing to do this. You ask really good questions in small group, and you have a hunger that sticks out. And so then I realized, like, am I called to this? Like, because I heard the word calling a lot. What does calling mean? And I would even ask Brent, my youth pastor, like, what do you mean I'm called to lead worship? Well, it means that God's given you a gifting and an anointing to be able to do that. And you might not be qualified yet, just like David probably wasn't qualified to be king. But just because your brothers got there first, or his brothers got there first, didn't mean it wasn't for him. And just because somebody else might have that gifting that's better than you doesn't mean that it's not for you later. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, well, okay, so I began to exercise that more, just get better at my gift. And let me just say this, like, if you realize you have a calling, that's just the beginning. Some people realize they have a calling, and it's almost like they quit operating and exercising their gift because they think their calling is going to get them through it. But I think the Lord requires us to do both. So therefore, I think there's some people who operate in ministry, and they've stopped being learners because they're called. You get what I'm saying?
For sure.
That was me at one point. I actually got to that season, but not yet. Not yet. But I began to learn. I mean, I began to take on as much as I could. So that's when I'd played drums, but I was like, I want to get better at drums. I want to learn how to play acoustic guitar and electric better. I want to learn how to mix music. I want to learn how to play keys. I want to learn the Nashville number system.
You're
a sponge. And I quit sports at that time. So I played sports all the way up until high school, and I quit at that time because I was like, this was going to be my thing. And eventually I began to ask, like, well, I can't do this for a living. And Pastor Brent was like, well, yeah, you can. And that was so foreign to me because, like, we didn't have a full-time music minister at our church. And so, you know, obviously the more and more research I did, the more and more I found, like, oh yeah, this is a thing. Like, this is something that people do in vocational ministry, is lead music and music ministry. And that was when I decided, like, and that was probably 10th grade. So it took about a year. And I still hadn't learned all the instruments at that point. I was still learning keys and music theory stuff. I mean, a general knowledge of music theory.
And this is all self-taught, no?
Yeah. So I did drum lessons, actually. I did drum lessons for about 3 months. They were once a week for 30 minutes. And it was just your basic 2 and 4, beat, learning technique and stuff like that. But then after that, it was just me getting my drum set was in a closet. And it's just me getting in the closet and trying to learn songs. Because I play by ear. Like, I can't read music.
Dang.
I can't read a lick of sheet music.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I can look at a chord chart like we were saying. But other than that, we better stop talking about this because people are probably bored out of their mind.
No,
right?
I'm interested. I'm interested. I remember when I first, 4 years ago, became a Christian and stuff, and Wes Edwards was there. And this just shows you about worship pastor and stuff. And I thought he was just someone who played there. Like, I just thought he just was good at instruments and he could sing, and that's just what he volunteered his time in. And I remember I was getting lunch with him one day, and I was like, "So where do you work, man? What do you do for a living?" He's like, "Oh, I work at the church. That's what I do. I lead worship." And like, that was totally new. Now, granted, I haven't been in the church long, but that was totally new to me. That is its own thing.
Yeah,
and it makes sense now.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, because people are like, well, "What do you do all day? Like, what do you like?" You just play music on the weekend, like you're a full-time musician. It's like, I'm not a full-time musician. Like, that's probably 10% of the job. The rest of it is coordinating and, getting in your creative realm and giving your best every weekend. So, we can't do Graves in the Gardens the same way every weekend. Like, we got to think creatively on how to make it and freshen it up. And it's not just that, but then also there's a realm that, to me right now, if you were to ask me, what am I excited about? What am I working on? Is being a pastor, like being pastoral, shepherding your volunteers, looking out for your volunteers, following up with them, getting lunches, you know, and then they have needs, you know, and so like you carry that weight of what they're dealing with. And so there's just so many different layers of what the job looks like on Sunday morning. And ministry's hard. Sometimes it's people. You got to deal with people's issues. And you're also working with others. Like, you got to learn how to be a team player. You're not going to always get what you want. You're not going to always get your preference. Most oftentimes you're not going to get your preference. So you got to sacrifice that. Like, so there's that part of it. And then there's parts of it, I'm trying to think. I mean, where you're working 60 hours a week, 1 week. And then there's a week where you're working 35 because, you know, there's the weekend. There's not much to do. So like Easter week, last week, I mean, it was every night, every day, rehearsals. We're doing a lot in pre-production to make sure like the opening video was right and done correctly. And then like this week, well, we just have service. So it's a pretty routine week. Right. So there's give and take. And I think for me, I've only been in this for 3 years, so I'm not an expert by any means, but I've tried to get where I can recognize where I need to sprint and then where I can jog, if that makes sense. So there's some weeks where I'm like, I need to sprint here. Like, I need to run as hard as I can to give this everything I can. And then there's some weeks where it's like, this doesn't require me to sprint. You know, I can jog in this week, or
like this particular week would be
this particular thing. Like, I can't sprint at every event. I'm going to be tired, right? I can give you a perfect example. Brotherhood, that was an amazing conference. And the planning of it, I told Scott Bircher, I was like, hey, like, I'm offloading this to you. I've got Easter coming up. We just got done with Christmas. Like, I'm creatively kind of chimed out in a sense. So if you could take it. So he did. And he ended up getting sick, so he couldn't even lead worship. So then I had to end up leading worship, which I was like, dang, I really wish Scott could have led worship. But it just like that was a example of, if you take and sprint and give it your all, and you should always give it your all. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But if you're always like just in the weeds every time the door is open, you're going to burn out.
Right,
I don't care how strong you are.
Right.
Like, and I'm not saying either, like, churches are doing a lot. Like, I feel like churches culturally the doors are always open. And I think there's a realm of sacrifice. Like, there's that line too, where you need to be able to sacrifice your own agenda, your own schedules. And a lot of people say, well, it's like, well, I don't want to be away from my family. It's like, well, you know, I'm glad Jesus didn't say that. You know what I mean? Like, like I think there's a point in time where we are consumers, because we should be investing into the church. So that maybe that does mean that you're away from your family a little while. Like, do you have a whatever it takes all in? I think you should have an all in attitude, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But also know, again, how to be self-aware and pace yourself, because ministry's a long game. It's not we get to do this one day and we're good for 10 days. It's just like, I didn't get saved once and then I was good for the rest of my life. Like, I need daily bread. I need to show back up to the altar. I need repentance today. And so I think if you take that concept and look at through that lens, through your professional, I'm just going to say for my professional life, you can start to see some similarities there. So
what would you say? That's good stuff, man. What would you say to somebody like, because I feel like you're kind of you're in a lose-lose situation, because I'm used to the more, I guess you'd use the word contemporary, but, you know, think Maverick City, obviously Elevation, and I'm obviously not alone in saying that, but then there'd be some people walking the church and be like, the music's too loud, sounds like a rock band, you know, go back to hymns. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but you kind of can't satisfy anybody almost in a certain sense in worship. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think everybody has a preference, and everybody has a genre of music. And if anybody's like, I don't want to say it like as if it's a bad thing, but people have a lot of preference about music. Your playlist probably doesn't look like mine. My playlist probably doesn't look like my dad's. And my dad's playlist doesn't look like my wife's. You know, like, we all have a different preference. So it is kind of mind-boggling to me that we expect everybody to get in the same room and like the same thing. You know what I mean? Like that is very interesting. Like even like there's kind of like this toxic thing going on. I think it's toxic where we kind of joke about, you know, I would say the older generation liking hymns. And it's like, well, what do you expect? That's what they grew up with.
Right.
Now, I will say this. I don't think that we should be getting in ruts with our music.
What do you mean?
So if you're hooked on hymns and that's all you can worship with, then I don't have the answer. But what do we do when somebody who has grown up on Elevation comes in our church for 10 years from now? You know what I mean? So there's got to be some give and take there. And I would just say the easiest answer to that question is, it's always been my heart to create and create a worship set list that's deep and wide, that gets to the depths of our hearts, but it's wide and it reaches all people and all preferences. Now, that's not every Sunday. You're probably not going to get a hymn every Sunday, but you're also probably not going to get rattle every Sunday either, right? Like, where's the medium? And that's part of our job is to figure out. I mean, it's not easy. It's not like you can just go pick 3 songs because you're eventually going to run out of songs.
Yeah, right.
So being creative and finding out, you know, what is your congregation leaning into? That might get loud and rattle. And that also might not be Cornerstone and Christ the Solid Rock. You know, that might be King of Kings. That might be, you know, what are we doing right now? Homecoming. That might be, you know, some of these middle ground songs. And there's different seasons too. But for the question of like people who say it's too loud or I like hymns, I respect their preference. I respect what they're comfortable with. I think all in all, you know, it's never anyone's heart, my heart, or the church's heart to displease or hurt anybody or leave anybody out. I think if we can help people realize that there's more than just them walking in the door. If we can be that church, then those comments probably will decrease. So yeah, I mean, that's probably the best way I can answer that.
Yeah, I almost feel like I'm trying not to be, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I feel like if we just sang hymns for 15 minutes, and we just went down the list and went off the book and read all the congregations sang together in the hymns every single Sunday, it's just like exercise. It's just like anything. If you become stagnant in the things that you do, right, I think you then prohibit growth. And some worship songs, especially newer stuff, I don't really like the first time. I'm like, yeah, I could do without that one. But then the more you listen to it, and I think the more that you really think about what it's saying, how it's speaking to your heart, it really grows on you, for me, like really quickly. Actually, one of the songs in particular I can think of is Bethel, Anything Is Possible. Yeah. I wasn't a big fan of that song initially, and my buddy got baptized while they were playing that song, and then I had the chance to like really like listen to it, and it's been one of my favorites. So I mean,
that's so true, man. Like I think there's so much. God's given us a great ability to change our mind, and I think it's so powerful when someone says, "I didn't like that song at first, but now I do." And I'm not trying to like over spiritualize this, but there's been so many instances where I've not liked a song. I'm trying to think of one. I didn't like Might Get Loud at first. I was the guy. I was like, man, it's too rock and roll. Right. Like, I don't understand. Like, does this have a place in the church? Well, I'm wrong. Because yes, it does. Like, somebody is going to be moved by that song. Somebody is going to identify with something they hear in that song. And God didn't set out a formula of what genre of music we need to be worshiping to. So of course it does. As the Deer. Bro, that's an old hymn. Like a lot of people don't even know that hymn.
I don't know that one.
I didn't like that song. And now I do. As the deer panteth for the water, all my soul longs after you. Like, what a great line. Like that just, I mean, when I say that line, my heart like opens up, and it's a hymn. So I think the ability to have our mind changed is very powerful. First, I think that's even a prerequisite. Before we get into this conversation about preference, are you willing to talk about the times where you've changed your mind about a song? Are you willing to talk about your heart being changed through a song that you didn't think you liked at first? I think too, like you talk about style. and principles. I've heard this before, that principles never change. Or let me say it this way: styles go out of style, but principles are endless.
Mm-hmm.
So like, people say, well, I'm just old school. Well, is that just another way for saying you're expired? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't like the lights in the worship service. Well, okay, you don't like the lights, but let's talk about the principle of the lights. All right, why did we have glass pane windows that were painted? It was to diffuse the light coming into the church, and it was to bring a vibrant color into the room, right? Like, that's their purpose.
Yeah,
to diffuse the sunlight. It changes the color. So now, 40 years later, I'm just going to ballpark it, we've got lights that do that on their own, and they're moving. It's the same principle. It's diffusing. It's using lighting to be creative, to express an element of worship. It just looks different. So you agree with the principle, you just don't like the style.
That's good.
So styles come in, they go out, but principles never change. And if we can stick to principles as why we do something, then I think that's the most important. If you tell me I like lights because it looks cool, that's gonna, I can get with that. But that's not gonna win that conversation.
Yeah, right. Or like the spirit only moves if there's a fog machine.
Right.
You know, that kind of.
Right.
I do think the church, and this isn't directed towards any church whatsoever, but there's a good book I'm reading called Reorganized Religion. Yeah. And it's talking about how denominations and Christianity is changing in America, just given COVID and given, even outside of COVID, just the trends. And I do feel like there's a lot of churches who get stuck in their ways of doing things because that's what appeases their current congregation. Yeah. Well, that current congregation eventually is going to die off. And so I think you have to, again, I have a bachelor's degree from a very mediocre college, but I'm not an expert by any means, but I feel like you need to somewhat, your principles obviously have to stay the same, but if you don't adapt your styles to current, then you're going to be just any old church that eventually will be a cell phone store in 20 years because you're just not adapting. Yeah. So if you want hymns, that's great, but that church probably might not be in existence in 30, 40 years. I don't know.
I think there's an important factor of realizing, like, there's people here on earth that are being born today that will probably not relate, maybe even not even hear hymns. So what does that mean in the church for 15 years from now? I mean, they might not even hear rattle, or that, I've used that example a lot, but what's that new song that More Than Able, that elevation? I mean, 15, 18 years from now, that song's going to be old. You know what I mean? So, like, you think about it in that context, and we need to always be willing to have our mind and our heart changed and be creative in what we do. What if we were still teaching like we taught back in the 60s? Right. Would kids still be able to learn? Definitely not through COVID, right? What if technology didn't exist and we still wanted to write with pen and paper, and we wanted to send out homework in a book bag instead of on an Excel sheet to your email that you don't even have to carry a book bag to school anymore? Like, what if we did things like that? Like, could we be effective? I don't know. Because that's a great point, because almost everything else we have, we welcome it. Technology, we usually welcome it. Everything else we do, we welcome change, even though we know we might not like it at first. We understand that there will be change, but it's almost like in church, and I can't think of any other examples. Church is just one of those few things where we actually kind of resist change. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the church does a great job with change. I genuinely do. I feel like there's some people, and there always will be, that don't like change, and that's okay. But I think overall, the church, I don't want to say every church, but I feel like overall the church is good with change. And I'll give you an example. When COVID hit, I don't know the numbers, but a lot of churches weren't doing online. And maybe change is the wrong word. I think churches do a good job adapting. I think if you look at it, adapting is like, something happened, so we got to do this. Like, if we don't do this, then, it's not going to be good. Change is like, we don't really have to do this. We're going to do this, though, because we feel like it's the right decision. I feel like some churches are good at adapting. Some churches are saying, God's asking us to do this, so we're going to do this. We're going to change this. Does that make sense? Yeah, right. Like, I'm trying to think of another example. I know a church that said we're after the pandemic. So when every church was online, the pastor of this church said, I don't think we need to do online anymore. God's telling me we're not going to do this. Makes no sense, right? It's like probably on paper it doesn't line up. How are you going to grow that way? Like,
Yeah.
online's the front door to your church, like, right? But he felt like God was telling him not to do that. And so being led by the Holy Spirit to change that, I feel like he did a great job of doing that. And I think churches overall handle change well. Now, there are some churches that I feel like are more traditional, and I often ask, like, who are they reaching? Well, they're reaching people who worship in that way. What that will look like in 10 years, I don't know. And I don't know if that's because they don't want to change. I just think they found what works for them. So, it's a very weighty conversation, because I feel like oftentimes we can put the church in a bad light when we say they don't change. And I'm not trying to like correct you or anything. Like, this is just like me articulating,
right.
But we can put the church in a bad light when we say they're bad at changing, because our minds, I think, oftentimes go to song choice and not looking like the world. And I don't think we're supposed to look like the world. There's a point in which we are supposed to be different, talk different, look different, walk different. And I think putting them in a bad light in that case can cut short of the things that the church has done for people. So you look at prison ministry, you look at songs like Might Get Loud, like that have just never been written in the church before, a song like that. You look at, like Elevation writing that song. I'm just going to go back to that. Like, that created a whole new standard that now churches are doing that song in their service. You know what I mean? So there's that side of it too. But I also get what you're saying as well. I feel like I'm going on and on, so I'm sorry. I also get what you're saying as well. There are some churches that die because they get so caught up on habits and things they've done because they've always done them that way. That's true.
Right.
That is definitely true. So yeah, does all that make sense?
No, I think churches mostly adapt. COVID's a good example, but COVID, I also think some churches struggled because what do? Do you come back and have in-person service? Then if you have in-person service, do you require masks? Because if you require masks, you're going to piss off half the congregation who don't want masks. And if you go no masks, then you're piss off the one that wouldn't have. They say you have to have masks. And oh my gosh, are you going back in person this weekend after Delta? And it's like, at some point, and I'm not accusing any church in particular of doing. I know churches were just kind of, they had to adapt because they had to, but I think sometimes churches just need to just stick to what the principle is and make a choice and stay in that versus waffling.
I do agree. Sometimes I'll say this about kind of my experience. Like, we spend a lot of time worrying about the noise a lot instead of the vision and the why, and keep the main thing. Let's not have a 2-hour meeting on whether or not people should wear masks.
Right.
Let's just make a decision.
Right. Exactly.
Somebody's going to be upset.
Right.
And that's unfortunate, but there's grace for that.
Right.
Like, and that's a two-way street. We'll give it to them, and hopefully they give it to us.
Right.
I agree with you on that. Like, I feel like we can get distracted very easily and very quickly with things that don't matter in ministry. Masks, they matter. Hold on. Disclaimer, put it at the bottom of the screen.
He just said COVID isn't real.
Still matters. And COVID is a very real thing. However, if that's what we're spending our time on instead of getting on our face before the Lord, we've missed the main thing. If we're spending our time on that instead of figuring out how can we point people to Jesus, we've missed the main thing. If we're letting the mask be the reason why we don't go to church, you've missed the main thing. If you're letting the mask, and let me say it this way. I'm going to say it this way because I've heard this more often than I've heard the other. If you won't go to church because you had to wear a mask, you missed the main thing. There are people in this world who have to write what they believe on paper because they can't say it out loud. But you won't sit in an hour of worship because you got to have something on your face. You missed the main thing. Dang. You did. I'm going to say this. Get back to church. get back to church. If you're still watching online, get back to church, get in the room, because there's something about being in the presence of God with others corporately that's different than watching it through a screen. If what happened in 2020 is still keeping you from taking that step, you've missed the main thing. Now, I understand that there's needs, and there's some people who have no business being out right now, because if they got COVID, that would be detrimental. But let's not live in fear anymore. Is that okay to say? Is that okay to say? Let's not live in fear anymore. And I understand there was a season of where like we didn't know what this was and we took precaution, but now we have. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't even think people are staying at home and watching online because of COVID anymore. I think it's more of a habit that they've created.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to go to church, and I can feel the same thing that I feel watching on a screen. Matter of fact, I can watch Elevation and feel better than actually investing in my home church, because Stephen Furtick preaches really well, and I don't really need to go to church anymore. So I wonder how much of that is true. I'm not trying to call anybody out, man. I'm really not. But get back in church. Like come back to church, because you need that more than you think you need that. Like, you need people. You need to be in the tangible presence of God. And I think, again, God has no boundaries, but you do. God can speak through the screen, but I don't know how well you're able to engage through a screen. You know what I mean?
No,
So let me just say this one more time. There are needs. There are people with things going on in their life that they don't need to get out. It probably still is dangerous for you to come out in COVID. Like, I can think of a few people right now in my life that it's like, yeah, you need to stay inside and try to, wash your hands and still, I guess, abide by some of the strict rules that the CDC had back in 2020, just so you don't get sick. But if you're healthy, if you've had COVID 3 times, come back to church. I don't know. Hot take.
No, that's good. That's good, man. Because there's been plenty of people. Well, first of all, that disorganized religion, it said that the average church lost 34% of population that never came back to church after COVID.
Wow.
That never did. 34, and that was on the average. Some churches obviously closed. Most are around 50, but 34% never came back in person.
Wow. Yeah. When was that? When did you read that?
That would have been, I think, the data was pulled from January 2022, I think.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was well after Delta, well after all that.
Yeah.
And, some churches lost 18, but on average, it was 34% never came back.
Wow. Well, so, I know, our attendance has, it's rose since we came back from the pandemic. I wonder how many of those are just new people and people who never, like you said, came back. I don't know, man. It's so interesting. I felt like for a while, I feel like we're finally past most of the online people not getting back in the room.
You think so?
For us. And the more I talk to people, the more I realize it's different for everyone. But just for us, I feel like our online has started to finally get back in the room. And I think that started happening Easter of last year. And it's gradually started to flow back in. I mean, I would even say our attendance in the past month has been the highest it's been since the pandemic. I can't, you'd have to fact check me on that, but it feels that way when I'm looking through the room. And there's more of a consistency to each weekend. But in the same breath, I know for a fact, I know for a fact that you look online, if you watch our live stream right now, and it's hard to tell because one interaction, a click, can count as a view.
Yeah, right.
But it's man, what if all of these people were in the room right now?
Right.
What if we went offline? Not in spite, but just.
That goes to your change, though. That goes to change.
Right.
That's a risky move, but it might be the right move. Yeah, I can see why you want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it could. You'd leave some people out.
I'll say this: I've been to some smaller churches that have been more, because I always we've obviously visited Elevation, and that's incredible. But you kind of chalk it up and be like, well, that's because it's a mega church and it's got I mean, obviously talented musicians,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. But then I've also been in smaller churches where, especially with the worship and just the intimate corporate setting, with being around people, especially of diverse backgrounds, but just being in that, you can't even get close to it online.
Mm.
Even if it's the same exact service you're watching, to your point,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
So you're saying like when you're watching online at like a local church, you feel like it's totally different, right?
If I'm at that service or watching online that same exact service, it's not even the same thing.
Right. So do you feel that way when you go to Elevation or watch Elevation online?
That's a great question.
Like, do you when you watch Elevation, do you feel like it's obviously not like in the room?
Right.
Do you feel like you've gone to church when you watch Elevation online?
No. I think if I watch Elevation online, because usually I'm watching it online, I'm only watching the message too, because obviously they're not going to usually put out their weekly worship. But if I'm watching online, it feels like more like I'll still supplement it during the week, but it almost feels more like a TED Talk sometimes, or like it's good to have, and I'm
Right.
thankful for that. But it's usually like on a Wednesday or Thursday I listen to it. I don't treat that as church. I don't feel like it is.
Yeah. So here's how I feel. Like any church, I can watch online. I mean, I can get on Instagram right now, and probably within 3 scrolls, I can find something that's going to feed me. That's going to be like, oh, that was really good. I'm going to share that. I'm not saying you can't be reached. I'm not saying that you can't be fed. I'm not saying that you can't be impacted by online church. Elevation does that for me. If I watch Elevation online, there's going to be something in that service. They're really good at what they do. That moves me. If I watch Covenant, there's going to be something that moves me. If I watch Open Door, there's going to be something that moves me, of course, because I'm a child of God and I'm there because I hunger for the things that are happening within what they're talking about or what's happening in that church, right? Which is Jesus. However, again, God has no limits. I, without a doubt, believe that he can save somebody through a screen. However, we have limits. And I doubt that you can routinely look at a screen and worship every Sunday and get the same in your heart as you do when you're there 100%.
Yeah.
Regardless of the church. Like, it doesn't matter. Your Elevation, your Bethel, your Covenant, or your St. Paul Catholic down the street. Like,
Right.
I mean, any church, large or small, you got to be there. And I think, like you were saying, it doesn't feel the same. Like it feels more, I guess, like a TED Talk or more like a segment of maybe like what is it called? A hot take.
Yeah, right.
A highlight reel when you're looking at the online. Some churches you listen to online, it's like, man, I don't know. But anyways, but yeah, I think there's some comparison there that's probably valid. It's not the same. I'm not saying you can't be impacted by it, but
Right.
no, you need to be there. Yeah, that's what I believe.
Do you ever watch like Elevation or Open Door and be like, man, I wish we did this that way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not going to be the guy that says, no, I don't do that.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think that's how I stay fresh and creative, like, is learning ideas from others. And I don't know if it's not a jealousy thing or like why are we doing that kind of thing. There are some things that I've watched other churches do. It's like, man, we're behind here. We need to get on this. Like, and I don't mean that like if we don't, the kingdom isn't going to be reached or effective, but like, it's like, man, we need to take that idea. It's a good idea, Open Door's doing a good job, like I want to see what they're doing in their worship. I think that's a great habit to have as a leader, is not to be closed off from what other ministries are doing, but look at them and be excited about what they're doing and then take what makes sense for you. Don't steal ideas. Like,
right. Yeah.
I'm not a really big fan of that. Not a big fan of that, but like, be authentic. And if something inspires you, then figure out what that was that inspired you about that. And then, take the ingredient and ask God to use it in your own house, I think is really important.
Do you ever feel like worship gets kind of treated like the redhead stepchild in church? Like, do you ever feel like there's people who come in at like 11:15, 11:20, catch the message?
Yeah.
Or do you feel like maybe you don't, maybe you guys skip the last song because of time, because the crux of church really is the sermon itself. Do you feel like that sometimes? And I'm not saying at Covenant, I'm not saying where you are, but just, do you feel like worship gets treated like that sometimes? Like not as an equal?
I don't know. That's hard for me to answer because I have a very blind view. I know what worship is to me. I know how much the songs matter to me. I know how much thought I put into worship that people don't even think about. Like, and I'm not asking them to. I do think there's something important to realizing that if you're showing up to church 5 minutes before and you need your coffee first, maybe you missed the main thing. You know, I'm not saying that you needed to get there for the first song, but when I go to church and I spend that hour with the Lord, that corporately, private time's different, but corporately, I want to be serious about it and I want to get everything I can. I'm speaking for me.
Right.
I think that might be less for some people, and that's okay. Like, I'm not asking for everybody to have the same need as I do, but I know when I step into the room, if I'm going to be late for the first song, then I'll get my coffee later. And that's okay if you don't need the first song. I do think that intimacy with the Lord is a progression. And, you know, if you're coming in 10 minutes late, then I don't want to hear how you felt worship was short. When we got to the third song, I could have went for so much longer. Well, you spent 8 minutes in the cafe line. And I don't mean to hate on the cafe. I love the cafe. And I get my own coffee in the morning because, you know, it keeps me going. But again, I think some people, it's just an easy fix. It's like, worship's not the redheaded stepchild. It's always been important. You just haven't made it important, right?
Yeah.
And stop worrying about everybody else. Like, you know, when you get in the room and you're worried about, well, where do I need to sit? Think of all the distractions.
Right.
You know, where am I going to sit? Well, we need to leave early, so I probably need to sit in the back. Or, you know, I don't have my coffee. Or this don't taste right. Or you just think of all the distractions that happen. I can't even imagine because, like I said, I'm very blind to all this because I get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I start preparing for 9:15. You probably get up at 5:30, and you're trying to get your kids to shower, right, and take a bath so that they're ready for church.
Right.
So, I'm already in that headspace, and I have to remember that too. Like, I guess to answer your question, it probably is very easy to assume that some people treat it as the redheaded stepchild, but some people just don't know. Like, they've never had to think in that realm before. Like, what if I did start getting ready for 9:15 service at 6 o'clock?
Right.
What if I did start preparing my heart for what God wanted to download inside of me at 6? You know, and some people can't, and it's unrealistic, and I totally get it. Like, when I have kids, man, that's going to be a struggle, you know, like, it's going to be a whole new challenge. But as far as time goes, like, in a service, I mean, we've had to cut an ending song before, and I guess it could be perceived as like it's not as important. But there's just a lot of other moving parts too, like, that have layers. So, like, God doesn't need the ending song to reach people. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, I want to hear more because I don't know if I agree with this. I don't know if I agree with you on this.
Okay. Yeah. So let me say this. I've heard people say, why aren't we having longer worship sets? Again, it's not about the length. It's about how much you hunger for what God gives you. If God gives me an apple, I'm going to eat all that apple. But some people say, well, I want God to give me 30 apples, right? Because I want more. But God can do a lot with a little.
Right.
And so when we talk about quantity and measurement, because we're looking at worship right now, I feel like in a measurement standpoint.
Right.
How much? We cut the ending song. Well, that's okay. God allowed us to have 3 songs in the beginning of service. So I'm going to appreciate that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to dive into that. Now, if we did the ending song, that's great too. And let me say this. I don't like when people say we're stifling the Holy Spirit. You don't have the power to do that. You don't. Like,
right.
And So I try to stay away from that phrase. However, if he's working, let's lean into that momentum. I'm definitely for that.
Yeah.
There's so many layers when we talk about, like, should we cut the last song? Should we not? There's been times where it's like, man, I wish we did the last song. And then there's been times where it's like, yeah, we need to cut the last song. Like, this has been going, for a while now. And, it probably just makes more sense to wrap the boat here. It'll probably be most effective to do that here. As far as the redheaded stepchild thing, like worship, I think to some people it might be, there's probably a reason why they're walking in after worship.
Right.
Maybe that's because it's not their preference. Maybe it's because, I don't know, they don't align music and God. They don't connect the two. They don't understand like how that works.
Yep.
For some people, for me, it's not like, and I can really only speak for me. I do think some churches, and we've talked about this before, hunger for the music more than others.
Yeah.
Like, I think some churches have identified a need for worship, and because they've identified that need, they press after it more and more and more, and probably some more than other churches. There's no right or wrong, but I think that's a thing, like, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can think of some churches that are like, worship is something that it's in their language. Like, we seek after it. We are hungry for it. We go all in.
Right.
We're dynamic. And then there's some churches where they're like, yeah, we have worship. I don't know that means they think it's it's second to anything, but that's just how they view it. You know what I mean? I tend to like a church that is the latter, though, or the previous, yeah. That's all in, but I'm a worship leader,
right?
Like,
yeah,
you know
right.
what I mean? So
I'm guilty, man. I used to view worship. I used to tell Kristen and my kids when they put worship music on in the car, I'd be like, can you change this? It all sounds the same. And I know I've said that a lot, but I used to feel like it all sounded the same. And then I also, to your point, I never saw the relation. I thought we were just like playing music, just to get people kind of. Yeah. Just to play music. I mean, the same as you would in like a doctor's office. Like, we're just playing music just to. Right. I didn't realize that it's its own entity, and it's just as important as everything else. Like, I didn't see the relationship with that for probably my whole life, but then at least probably 3-4 months too, and at least became a Christian. It still took a little while for the dots to connect. Yeah. What would you? So here's an issue I struggle with, man. And so going back to I used to sit in the way back, and the issue with the way back is then you see everybody, and I got very distracted. I used to watch everybody, and then I'd be like, Chris Lyle and I used to joke, like, if he had his hand up, I'd be like, my boy, he's got his hand up, then he's had a good week. Like, he's feeling it. He's got. And then some people go double hands. Some people, women tend to go here, and then I just have a hard time. I don't know what to do with my hands during worship sometimes, and some of it's on me where. I struggle, dude. I stand next to Tyler Allen. I stand next to Tyler Allen in worship. You gotta understand, it's like being next to Aaron Rodgers and then also trying to throw a football the same as him. And then usually Kristen's on my other side. She's got her hands up, and so I don't know what to do with my hands. I feel it in the worship, but I'm too scared to put my hands up, man.
Really?
I think so. If I'm being honest, I think I'm too worried that people are going to see me with my hand up, and they'll think, if I'm just being honest, think I'm kind of weird, maybe. I haven't fully fleshed that thought out, but I'm nervous sometimes. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember back to a point where I felt nervous doing that, honestly, because I was there too. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah, but you were in like middle school though. I'm 36 years old,
Yeah. I mean, but just so that I can relate with you. Yeah. Like, first of all, thanks for saying that. Nobody will ever admit to that. So,
no, dude, I struggle with it a lot.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, you've heard me say before, I want to ask everyone to lift your hands in this room right now. Yeah. Like, because I truly, and I think you believe this too, you're probably just uncomfortable with it. Tell me if I'm wrong. Like, there's something to being expressive in our worship, right? We do it at sports games, so we get that, right? Mm-hmm. As far as the comfortability of it, I think maybe it's supposed to be that way. Maybe you're supposed to feel uncomfortable for this season, and until you do it, just like anything else, it will eventually become something that is comfortable to you. If I try to do a handstand right now, I'm going to be very uncomfortable. If I try to do 10 push-ups right now, I'm going to be very uncomfortable. So it's a spiritual exercise, right? To put our hands up, a spiritual demonstration. So the first time you do it, you're going to be uncomfortable. Absolutely. Because when do we ever just put our hands up in the air?
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of any reason other than touchdown, your favorite team wins. And then, so when you think about that, like maybe we're breaking down to some of the philosophy of it. Everybody else in the room is excited about the same thing you are when you're watching a sports game. So when they score, it feels right to cheer and jump and yell. But aren't we all excited about Jesus when we get in the same room?
Y'all, thanks for listening. I'm going to cut this episode into 2 parts because Ricky is about to dunk on my head with what worship is, what it is not, what do I do with my hands as I'm looking like Ricky Bobby after he won that first race, and why do we do the things that we do during worship and what worship really is. And so it's pretty heavy, and so I thought the best thing to do, especially as you stretch past hour 1, the best thing to do would be to split it into 2. And so we'll get the other one out here soon. What else? Oh, yeah, the other part is I'm not awesome. I'm not awesome at this. I'm learning. And so my camera actually kicked out at about an hour and 12 minutes there towards the end. So the second half of the episode, y'all be blessed and gracious to know that God is good, and God blessed you without my face on the screen. So that's good news too. So you'll see Ricky, and then you'll just have my audio. So there's that too. And then also we got these in, which are pretty. These jokers are soft. So we got these shirts in. One in like a heathered pink, which you know, you gotta have some swag to wear it, some confidence. But it's nice. And then we got more your traditional look. I will say these shirts, I don't know what they're made out of other than gloriousness, but it looks like they're made out of 50% polyester, 25% cotton, and 25% rayon. I think that's how you say that, rayon. I think rayon I think that's the magic right there. So these are the kind of shirts that like you'll wear and they just get better and better with time. So yeah, so hit me up if you want one of those on Facebook, whatever, social media. The email's on there, or text me or however. It's just $15. We're not trying to turn a penny here, or anything like that. But yeah, so I think that's pretty cool. Just putting that on the front, and putting our legacy forward, and how we're gonna live, and why we're gonna live, and how we're gonna do the things, and why we do the things that we do. So, anyways, I appreciate y'all's support. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.